Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are in Australia, New Zealand, the world, wherever you are. I'm always amazed at the people and where they join in these calls from. So thank you so much for joining us. I've got a short presentation to share with you, maybe about 30, 40 minutes, something like that. And then there'll be time at the end for questions. But I do want to encourage interaction as we go through. So if you haven't done a webinar before, I'm sure you all have by now. Remember like last year, 2019, like a webinar was like, ooh, what's this strange thing called a webinar? Like now there's been like 1 billion webinars. Back in the day when poorly behaved people got in the way of flexible working, you remember those days. So just if in case it's the first time, hi Georgina, how are you? If you haven't done a webinar before, so the chat there on the right, certainly as I look at it, which probably as you look at it as well, that's for you to kind of make comments about things that you've seen. It's a place for emojis and lols and oh my God, that's so me. Whereas if you've actually got a question, there's a button at the bottom that says ask a question. So if you click there and type in your question, that way it means I don't miss anything. So I kind of like to flick, unlike like normal presentations where I could speak from the stage where people would just ask questions in the middle of a speech. You know, that just doesn't happen. But this gives me the opportunity to do it where I can answer questions in real time. So if you've got a question down there, and the chat is for you guys to interact. It'd be great to find out where people are joining in from. So maybe let's just make sure the chat's working. There's a couple of people waving. Hello, Aaron. If you can let me know where you're joining from, whereabouts in the world are you? And maybe what's one thing you've learned about yourself or you've learned about the world in 2020. Oh my God, how much stuff has gone on that motivates us and demotivates us at the same time. Yeah, thanks for rubbing that in, Andrew. A real office. Yeah, cheers. I'm still celebrating because I had a haircut yesterday. It's Melbourne things, Melbourne people, we know. Adelaide, sadly not from Whiskey and Element, Daniel. There'll be a time, and it's very, very soon. Office in Britain, lockdown paradise. Yeah, I'm not sure it's a paradise show. Well, it depends. Could be for you. It's definitely not for me. Awesome. Backyard from home. Yeah, it is a beautiful day actually in Melbourne. You know, we take anything right now if the sun's shining. Back of March. Fabulous. So many different places. Brisbane. Brisbane was the last place that I went to before we got locked down. I remember being on the plane and joking with someone. I was like, oh, we may not travel for the next 6 months. Yeah, it turns out that was right. Anyway, so that's the place for you guys to hang out. Look at that, a couple of people in the same place. Didn't even know it. Gotta love the way everybody connects. So I just want to say a big thank you to Finite Group. If you don't know Finite Group, awesome bunch of people. I know I would say that, but I generally don't say that if I don't mean it. And I do mean it. They're an awesome group of people. They're award-winning recruitment, contracting, and IT consultancy services organization, which operate throughout Australia and New Zealand. It comprises all of the businesses that you can see on screen here. So Finite Excel, can't read them all. Roban, Southern Cross, who did I miss out? Oh, 920, the lovely people at 920 in New Zealand. And they unite people with opportunities, candidates with careers, and clients with quality personnel. They are passionate and seek ways to improve every single day. Their lifeblood is connecting great people, which they've done today by doing this. So thank you so much to the people at Finite for giving me this opportunity. I'm going to make me small because you're not here to look at me. I've got some slides to show you. And I'm going to talk today about how to motivate yourself to ensure that you bring it every single day. Yeah, they are. Go Southern Cross. Whoop, whoop. Okay, cool. Let's get into this. Let's get cracking on the presentation. So how to motivate yourself. So let's start with the obvious. So I've got a bunch of books. I often quote different people's books, things that really inspire me. Every book that you see on screen is something that I recommend that you read. All right, which kind of either challenged my way of thinking or kind of confirmed what I knew to be true. And this is one, Jeff Hayden, who wrote The Motivation Myth. I think often people look at highly motivated, successful people and think that they're born like that, and they're really, really not. So start with a bit of an obvious statement from Jeff here, that success is repeatable and predictable. It's about doing the right things diligently. And so that's the important word in this sentence, is diligently. Because often I think that we all know we're generally good at understanding priorities. So we know what the right things are that we should be working on, but we don't often do them diligently. And by diligently, it's being attentive, it's being committed, and it's making sure that we kind of get to that published, not perfect end game. Either sometimes we overdo it and we're trying to get something to be really, really perfect before we release it, or else what we do is we half-arse it. It's a good Liverpool term that. We half-arse it. We can't be bothered to do it properly. So we do the right things, but diligently. So do it once, do it well. Not do it right, do it well. The right way. So it's about finding different mechanisms to do things for the age that we live in now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about your ongoing relevance, very important for motivation, over and over. So, the inference there is that what successful people do is they create a bit of a process. They understand the important things. They challenge themselves to stay at the top of their game. And then they just do that over and over again. They don't overwork. They're not working like 1 million hours a week. If you ever work with those people who are like, oh, I'm so productive, I work 1,000 hours a week. I'm like, dude, but do you? You're in back-to-back meetings every day. That's not being productive at all. But, certainly the people that I follow, the people that influence me, they have good routines. They challenge some of those bad habits that they pick up every now and again. They make time for procrastination. I don't think that enough people do this. I think, in order to stay as motivated and productive as you can be, you do have to make time for procrastination. You have to say, all right, for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to kind of step away from my desk. I'm going to go and have my lunch. That's the time that I'm going to flick through LinkedIn and see what, kind of opportunities Finite have got for me. Or I'm going to look at my Instagram feed. And what I'm not going to do is dick about looking at Facebook at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm working. But we all need a break from work. We all need kind of a break from ourselves. We need that opportunity to recharge. So I think, what successful people do is they do make time for that almost disconnection, and they make time for that procrastination. Now, I follow lots of comedians for a number of reasons. Firstly, obviously, I like to introduce fun into all the work that I do, the workshops and the speeches, because I think if you're laughing, you're learning, right? Which actually, I just made that up, and that sounds horrible. Do you know what I mean, though? But if you're having a bit of a laugh, you're kind of like, okay, my endorphins are up. I'm feeling pretty positive and chipper. I'm going to talk about that as well. I've got a lot to talk about in the next 40 minutes. I'm feeling a bit of chip, and it's good. We're creating connection. We're finding we're laughing. It's all good. Not only that, comedians are some of the hardest working people that I know. Nobody is kind of born a great comedian and then they just get. It's not like your dad's a great comedian, so that makes you a great comedian and you're into the family business. Obviously, children are influenced by what their parents do, but they are some of the hardest working people I know. And the same is true of other people in the arts who, frankly, have got it pretty tough right now, the world that we live in. They've seen all the funding taken away. They've seen all opportunities for them to earn money being taken away. And yet, they keep going. And Jerry Seinfeld is one such person. You don't have to like Seinfeld, the TV show. Some bits of Seinfeld, the TV show I like, some bits I don't. But what I love about Jerry Seinfeld, he didn't conform. He didn't conform at the time that he came to prominence in the late 70s, early 80s. We were kind of getting to this backlash comedy, and you had a lot of people who were swearing and trying to kind of create a bit of outrage. And Jerry Seinfeld was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. Not that I'm, kind of whiter than white and pure and all of that, but he just decided to do it a different way. He's one of the masters of observational comedy. Right. And he's really kind of gone his way with that. So what he does, he jokes about things that kind of relate to us. And then there's a bunch of people that have kind of copied Jerry Seinfeld's style. But what makes him so successful is his dedication to his work. And you could have stopped this sentence at the end of challenges, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about today's session. You have to motivate yourself with challenges. Yeah, you do. You do. It's up to you to motivate yourself. Now, if you're a manager on the call, what I don't want you to do is just take that message away and say back to the people that work as part of your team, well, it's up to you to motivate yourself. Because actually, if you're a manager, it's also your job to motivate and inspire your team. I don't know if you know that, but it is. In fact, it's a key part of your job is to motivate and inspire other people. In fact, it's the main part of your job. In fact, it's all of your job, let's face it. Yeah, you need to know the technical stuff. Yeah, you do, because you need to be able to ask the right questions and make the right decisions. But you still have to motivate and inspire people. But principally, it's down to yourself. And that is how you know you're alive. And I think, one of the questions I had at the start is, what have you learned? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about the world? Now, this is not about you being like, oh, we're in a global pandemic. If I don't learn a new language, then I'll have wasted. I've seen a bunch of that stuff on LinkedIn. If you haven't learned a new skill, you've wasted the pandemic. Like, really? Anxiety, stress, I'm going to get up and learn Italian this morning. Like, I can barely make it out of bed some days and eat my breakfast, right? Anybody else find themselves in that position? It's tough. It's tough, but we have to find ways to motivate ourselves. All right, so I'm going to try and give you some of those insights into that as we go through. If you don't know anything about me, so what can I tell you that I haven't said before? So I, permanent employee myself for 30 years. I really started from nothing. I left school with pretty much no qualifications, got a job working on a front counter of a bank, and kind of the rest kind of grew from there. I had ambition. I didn't want to start a job and then it end there. When I first started as a bank teller, there were people who were like probably mid-30s who were still doing bank telling at that time and moaning about the fact that they'd never moved up, but they never did anything to really motivate and challenge themselves and get better. I just didn't want to be that person. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just didn't want to be that person. I think my big break came 97. I was asked to become a project manager. I didn't know what one was. And they dangled a bunch of kind of rewards, cars and credit cards in front of me. I'm like, I want to be a project manager. And at that stage, I became probably a manager for the first time, even though I'd managed people in different ways. All of a sudden, I had to motivate and inspire a group of people who weren't like me in the slightest, all from different backgrounds who wanted to do different things. And so I had a good boss who was very good at pointing out my personality flaws and my communication faux pas. And he gave me the latitude to learn. And I think that, that's what I remember most about him is that I made a bunch of mistakes. You have to make mistakes along the way in order to grow. And he allowed me that, but made sure I didn't make them again. I headed up big project departments in the private sector in the UK. I'm originally from Liverpool in the UK. My accent's a bit all over the place these days. And then emigrated to New Zealand in 2007. Spent 6 great years in Wellington, and I've desperately missed Wellington and its freedom, particularly over the last 3 months. And made some great friends there. But made a bit of a name for myself in the public service there by just being a bit different when it came to team building and building culture. The projects are relatively straightforward, but most organizations make a complete pig's ear out of it, to be perfectly honest with you, because they don't concentrate on the important things. But this presentation is not about that. Emigrated to Melbourne in 2013 and worked at a public service company here, government organization, changed the culture in 7 months, me and the team. And I've been working for myself for the last 5 years. I've written 5 books. The 5th is out on February. As we go through, take as many pictures, as many screen grabs of the slides as you want. We are recording this, and the recording will be available. You can also follow me on social media, and I'll put some information up at the end if you want to know any more about me. So what's intrinsic motivation? So intrinsic motivation in layman's terms, and we talk a lot about motivation, but I don't think we ever take the time to really understand it that well. So I'm going to provide a little bit of that, but also, I think key is to give you some actions you can take away where you can motivate yourself or to help you to do that. And basically intrinsic motivation is doing stuff you want to do. That's basically it. It's, you've got that feeling that you're like, I really want to do this. I really want to do it. I really want to do it well. I'm going to make it a priority. It's something that I get value from. It's something that I see as adding to my growth. And so when we talk about intrinsic motivation, it really is about that desire to do something that you want to do. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about purpose shortly because the pressure's on. Has everyone found their purpose? Yeah, the pressure's on. Because it's not just about that. It can be about being asked to do something and really wanting to do a good job at that moment in time. So that's what intrinsic motivation is. And of course, so much is written about intrinsic motivation. And I'll keep coming back to the successful people because we do look at these kind of highly motivated people and we make it sometimes about extroversion and introversion. Well, if I was an extrovert, I'd be motivated. It's not nothing to do with that. It really, really hasn't. It's the discipline that people have to show up every day, regardless of what they're doing, right? And to do a great job. Now, discipline's become a bit of a dirty word, mainly because we kind of connect it to some of the old command and control cultures of the past. And unfortunately, some of those are still out there. I've actually spoken to a couple recently who actually want to make a change, which is a good thing. But they've recognized that what they've got is people who try and dictate motivation. Do you know what I mean? Anybody ever worked for someone like that? It's like, if you don't buck your ideas up, like, that's a really no way to motivate people. And yet that's what we used to do. I was motivated to behave in school by someone whipping me with a cane, an adult whipping me with a cane. I mean, who decided that was okay? Did I come out of the office feeling more motivated? Funnily enough, no. Listen, it only happened once, never again. So we do, they find ways to lift themselves, right? Sure, sometimes a well-placed word from a manager or a partner or someone else just kind of unlocks that and reminds us what we're here to do and the value that we're here to add. But ultimately, it's about us finding that spark inside and finding that discipline and that motivation. And so, discipline is really about creating a bit of a routine and then having the courage to stick to it. But in times of crisis, and you know what? In times where there isn't a crisis, sometimes it's hard to motivate yourself. It really, really is. And we let external factors get in the way. We let external factors influence the way that we show up. And we know that we shouldn't. We do. We know that we shouldn't, but we do. Now, we've definitely suffered. Motivation has definitely suffered during the pandemic. So I just want to give you some signs that you may not be as motivated, kind of as you think you are. Now, you may be able to tick one or all of these. You frequently don't know what I don't know. All the days are rolling into one. I have no idea what I'm doing. The same thing. I have no idea. Yeah, that's one. You shower in the evening because you just can't be arsed to get up now, particularly when you're working from home. There's no pressure on me to get showered in the morning. I'll do it at night. It's like, well, no, get up with intent, just because you're not going to an office. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm definitely going to talk about that going to the office in the next presentation. So the third one of my friends did. Bought a dog. So like a rescue dog, it's a good thing to do. I'm just not getting out enough. I'm going to start running. I'm going to buy a rescue dog, and the dog's going to help me to exercise. I'm like, do you need an animal to help motivate you? I mean, it's cool that you're doing a rescue dog. If you're going to buy a dog, it might be a rescue dog. Do you need that? Oh yeah, I definitely need that. The irony is that dog is now taking him for a walk around the cemetery every day. So I'm not sure that's really worked out. Yeah, lasted a week. His knees couldn't take it. I can't do running. I should have known that before I bought the dog. Yeah, you really should. The last two are the ones that you really see. You're always busy, but you're not productive. I'm so busy today. I'm so busy. I've got so much work on today. I've never had a day like today. I've had back-to-back meetings. Like, is that productivity? Back-to-back meetings? Not really. Just stuffing your days full of stuff. Just like I've got a task list as long as my arm. It's like, ooh, wow. You're never going to get through all of those things. Not only that, you're going to add to them. It's just going to get longer and longer and longer because you have no discipline to do the things that are important and to say no to some stuff. And certainly that's one of the things that I've seen, as a former manager for 20 years, is often people's motivation is undermined by the fact that they're not able to say, no, I can't do something right now. And so I think, you have to learn how to say no. Now, this is not you being difficult and just going, no, I'm not doing it. No. When I ask my son if he wants to go for a walk with me, no, I'm not doing it. We'll take the dog for a walk around the cemetery. It's not me. It's not about being difficult. It's about saying, listen, I've got 3 priorities I need to get finished today. Listen, if I've got time, I'm happy to come back to you and see how I can help. But right now, I just don't have the bandwidth. It's a good one we use for all those people on from NBN Co. Bandwidth. That'll be uppermost in your minds. I don't have the bandwidth to do it right now. But, you have to find ways to keep yourself motivated. And that means that you have to stay on top of the things that you have to do. You have to remind yourself of the discipline that you need to get through it. And so, recognizing the signs when you're not as motivated as you could be is just important as motivating yourself. Because as soon as you recognize the signs, you can go, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm definitely not going to watch Tiger King reruns again while I'm eating my lunch at home. It was good, but it's not that good. You don't need to watch it. Just some random guys and big cats. So some signs that you're not motivated. And I think just learning kind of what your triggers are is vitally important, because either you can give yourself some time to procrastinate and then do your job, or start baking it into your day and creating a real positive routine about what you want to get done. But ultimately, motivation comes down to 3 factors. Now, I'm taking this from Decky and Ryan's work that they did around self-determination theory. There's been, again, lots written about self-determination theory. For those of you who've read the book Drive by Dan Pink, he talks a lot about self-determination theory. And essentially, self-determination theory is all about kind of humans, their personality, and kind of how they motivate themselves to grow. All right. And so what they found is that motivation, it's 3 factors to motivation, is competence, autonomy, and connectedness. So yeah, Tiger King does seem like a long time ago, right? That was early pandemic. Remember early pandemic? There's so many things that happened in early pandemic. Like when Harry and Meghan went rogue. That was this year. Remember that? Back in the day. So 3 things: competence, autonomy, connectedness. Talk to each of these and break it down in kind of those good old-fashioned layman's terms so that we understand it. So competence is kind of all about you. It's all about what you know. It's all about your ongoing relevance, and it's all about you and your routines. So competence is how well do you know your job? Now, the reason this is important for motivation is that when we have to do something, but we don't have the knowledge of how to do it, it undermines how motivated we feel to get it done. And so you'll know this. People will often say, do the hardest things first, right? Have you ever heard that at the start of your day? What you need to do is do the hardest thing first. Once it's out of the way, you'll feel so amazing. You'll be able to cry. Like for me, if you're struggling with motivation, what you need to do is do the easiest thing first, right? Because you just need to get going. That's what you do. The analogy I use is when you've got like a rusty handle, which everyone's got a rusty handle, don't they? Everyone's got one. And you put a little bit of WD-40 on it and you just start to turn it. You're like, I've got it. And it might still be stiff, but you've got it. It just needs that little bit of oil. So always do something easy first when you're finding it hard to get started, right? Write your task list. Now, your task list, again, part of your competence is understanding how to manage your priorities. Now, you might have 2 task lists. So I maintain 2 task lists. I have a master task list of all of the things that I've got to do. And then I have a daily one. And on my daily task list, maybe 3 things. So today I recorded a podcast first thing this morning. I had a coaching session at 10:30. I'm doing this now. And then I'm doing a 90-minute speech at 3:00. So I know that I've probably only got time for about 2 or 3 things today. So the night before, I always think about my next day. I want to be motivated, right? What I don't want to do is get up on Thursday morning and go, I've got so much work to do. I'm never going to be able to get through it. I've already done it the night before. I've set myself up for success. I feel motivated to get up and like, right, I've got these as well as all of these things that I've got to do, I've got 3 things that I want to get done. And when I get to the end of those, I know I'm going to have had a great day. All right. So when we don't have the knowledge of how to do some of those things, or we haven't set ourselves up for success, it undermines our motivation. And then consequently, we never get to the point where we're productive enough to get through the things that we need to do. So competence is you knowing your job well. And where you don't know your job well, it's about going and gaining that knowledge. Now, often that happens, and this is what successful people do, is what they do is they use time during the weekends to do that. Not a load of time, because they still want to make sure that this is refreshed, right? They want to make sure they get some exercise, but they'll give up some time. They wouldn't really watch TV for hours on end, right? They do some reading and they really clue themselves up to make sure they're on top of where they need to be with their knowledge. Competence is also around developing your future skills and understanding the kind of world that we live in now. For too often, what we had, well, certainly I used to work for a bunch of managers who were just like, this is who I am, take me or leave me. It's like, well, your style really isn't relevant, not only to me, because we're different personalities, but for the world that we live in now. You see a lot of this in politics, right? You see a lot of middle-aged white men, middle-aged white men, but you do, who are just like, this is the way we've always behaved and this is, everyone else has to change. It's like, yeah, no, you really have to look at yourself, your behavior, the world that we live in now. Of course, it's not just middle-aged white men, mainly. But we do. It's about developing not only the future technical skills, but the future emotional skills. Now, some people like to box this up and make it all about generations. This generation don't understand. Like it's got pretty much bugger all to do with generations, with the exception of we bring our children up to live and work in a different way, and then we get to throw stones at them when they join the workforce. How does that work? They're all so privileged. Well, if that's the case, then it's your fault for bringing them up like that. It's got nothing to do with generations. It's got everything to do with personality, empathy, motivation, skill set, all of these things, right? And so we want to make sure that we not only are developing our future technical skills, but our future emotional skills as well. Like, you're never the finished article. Don't give up. You're never, ever the finished article. There's always something that you can learn either about the world or about the way the world works. One of the things we saw at the start of the pandemic, flexibility, people like me have been calling on organizations to embrace flexible working. Certainly I've been doing it for the last 4 years, because, you can have a really successful culture and successful organization by implementing a work from anywhere approach. And what that does is it says to employees, we trust you to decide where you need to work, to be as kind of motivated as you need to be productive, so that we all succeed. That doesn't mean everyone works in the office all of the time and everyone works from home all of the time. Like, so many cultural quick fixes. I'll touch on this in the next webinar in November. But we love our cultural quick fixes. But what we want to do is really emphasize the trust that we have in others, so that they can work anywhere. And organizations all of a sudden were like, oh, flexible working's the future. It's like, it was the future about 15 years ago. It's not the future now. The future now is how we embraced kind of machine learning, AI, to take away some of the mundane tasks that we don't have time to do right now. And it's about having that foresight to look ahead. It doesn't need to be in a strategy. What you need to do is collectively, as a group of people, is come together and think about what the future looks like. I think the last thing about competence as well is how much you give back. So it's not just about you kind of absorbing knowledge and making sure that you're all right. It's about how you're helping other people to do that. So a big part of competence is what technical skills do you have, what emotional skills you can have, and how can you coach, support, and help others. Now, I think a big thing with regards to motivation, particularly if you're a manager, if you notice that someone isn't as motivated as they should be, that's the time for you to switch your ears on, your mouth off, and listen. Because when people lack motivation, often it's a sign that they could be stressed, anxious, or even depressed. and actually right at the start of the pandemic, organizations were doing everything that they can to make sure that people's mental health was managed. And that was a fabulous thing. And we need to make sure that we carry on doing that. We don't want to lose that. We want to make sure that, particularly managers, constantly aware that a lack of motivation could be a signal to something bigger. So keep your eye on that, because we want to be able to coach and support and then offer people professional help where they need it. But your own motivation, you get a sense of satisfaction and confidence when you help somebody else. So you should always look for those opportunities to do so. So that's the first element of motivation, is competence. The second one is around autonomy. Now, I remember reading Powerful by Patty McCord. Patty McCord is former chief talent officer of Netflix. And in it, she talks about empowerment. And she said, our job as a management team wasn't to empower people. Our job as a management team was to make sure people felt empowered to do their jobs. In other words, didn't want to constantly remind them that you're empowered to make decisions. People just knew. Right? And they knew because of the actions and the behaviors and all of these other things. So a big part of your own motivation is knowing that you're in control, knowing that you're in control of your own life, of your own behavior, of your own decision. It's a big part of your own motivation, is knowing that you can make those decisions. Now, this is something that Dan Pink talked about in his book Drive, and he talked about autonomy, and he talked about the different elements to autonomy. And so he talked about the fact, when it comes to tasks, is you decide what you need to do. So this is kind of relating it back to what I talked about earlier about understanding your priorities. Is that's your job to manage that. Now, I get that kind of other priorities come in from the side. And if you're working in government, other priorities come in from the top. Like, constantly work. Yeah, I was speaking to someone not long ago, and they asked me a question during a speech. They said, oh, what do you do to motivate yourself if you're working at the whim of a minister? I was like, well, the first thing you do is accept that that's the way it works in the public sector. If you don't like that, go and get a job in the private sector, because that's the way it works. Like, a minister can change their mind, or a government official can change their mind just like that. And all of a sudden, TikTok's banned. It's just like, well, how did that happen? Because they don't like the people who use it. It's just the way that the system works, I suppose. But when that happens, it's up to you to rejig your priorities, to look at your tasks and say, okay, well, this is my master list. If that's now come in, what can't I get done today? So this is you staying on top and in control of what you have to do. What can I feasibly get through today? How much time have I got to work? Like, look at the meetings that you have, right? And most organizations kind of bog themselves down with meetings. I'd like to think when we went to a kind of more virtual way of working, that organizations weren't lazy and didn't just book the 30-minute, 60-minute meetings in everybody's calendars and kind of add these back-to-backs, which is ridiculous. Instead we made time for productive work. And I think, when we talk about autonomy, you have to recognize that you don't have to go along with the crowd. If you have more important stuff to do than attend the meeting, then you decline it and you send your apologies because you've got higher priority work. I think often we feel there's a fear that we have that if we don't attend a meeting, either we'll miss something or people won't look at us favorably. I don't know anybody who got fired for declining a meeting and being super productive. I don't know anybody. I think the other thing, just while I'm on meetings, I'm on a bit of a roll with that, is don't make them 30 minutes and 60 minutes. You're just conforming. You have the authority and the autonomy to change them. Master the 20-minute meeting or the 40-minute meeting. It's got nothing to do with agile. It's got everything to do with how productively you can use your time. With the meetings are only 30 minutes and 60 minutes because it's the Outlook default. Right. And then you just follow everybody else and you don't put anything in the invite. Have you ever had those? People don't, you just catch up, nothing in there. I was like, I decline. I used to decline them and said, unless you can tell me the value to me of attending this meeting, I won't be attending. So, I was still a good human. I declined it. I didn't just ignore it like most people do. But yes, you have the autonomy to decide what tasks need to get done. You also have the autonomy to decide how long things are going to take. Now, what you want to do is take enough time and no more, which sounds incredibly ambiguous. But what I mean by that is if you strive for perfection, you'll only ever achieve disappointment. Because nothing in the history of the world ever was ever perfect, right? And one of the things I love about the adoption of, I guess, a more agile mindset, not an agile method, an agile mindset, is this concept of what we want to do is deliver something in a highly structured way that delivers value quickly, whilst also recognizing that it will never be perfect. So I love that. I really love. Now, that's not suitable for everything. Right, one of the mistakes we make in our organizations is going, that's agile, that's waterfall, or let's do everything agile now. It's the new thing. No, that's not the way it works. Cultural quick fix. There it goes again. And that sense that you can do different things in different ways. So you decide how long something is going to take. This is where you'll use your competence to assess, well, I'm going to give myself this much time, just enough time and no more. You don't want to overdo it, but you want to focus just on the amount of time you need for that piece of work. So task and time. Technique. So again, this is about your competence and how you apply it. You've got lots and lots of technical skills, lots of them. So you get to decide you get to decide which technique you're going to apply in order to do your work. Right. And again, all contributes to your own motivation, because if you feel that you're in control, it's not about being a control freak, right? But if you feel that you're in control about the way that you do things, it adds to your intrinsic motivation. You want to do it because you know the best way to do it. I have a big problem with project organizations who are like, this is our process. You must do everything this way. That takes away all autonomy. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Is that for everything that we do, there's some certain things that we have to do, right? Every project needs a plan. It needs some way of capturing risks and issues, right? And there needs to be a schedule of tasks. That's just project manager's job. In the same way that, there are some things that we need to conform to make sure workplaces are safe and that people aren't physically or emotionally harmed, right? So psychological safety and physical safety. But trying to mandate the way that everything should be done just leads to a loss of motivation. And you probably find it's like, I'm sick of being told what to do. Have you ever done that? Sick. Why can't they just let me get on with the job? That's lack of autonomy. Undermines your motivation. All of a sudden you're procrastinating, you lose productivity, and everybody suffers, but mainly you, because then you struggle to get up. You're like, God, oh my God, just let me get on with it. Just let me get on with it. So techniques, and again, part of you staying relevant is looking at what's out there. What can I use? What are other people doing? It's not necessarily copying them, but asking yourself, how can I apply this to the work that I do? And then the final thing around autonomy is around the team. Now, if you're a manager, so often you get to pick and hire the team. That's cool. And what you want to do is make sure you've got a good set of core values, a vision that can be used to inspire people. And then you're looking for a good personality mix on the team so that you've not got groupthink. For everybody else, for managers who inherit teams, even though you don't get to pick the team, you get to work together as a group of people to define the culture that you need to be successful. Lots of people think that culture is imposed on them by senior managers, and that's just blatantly not true. It's not true. Great cultures are the sum of great subcultures, which means that everybody has to do their bit to define the culture that they need to be motivated, productive, and to hit the goals. And that's made up of understanding each other's personality, having a vision that inspires you, agreeing how you're going to behave towards each other as human beings, agreeing how you'll collaborate, what are those principles of the way that we'll get things done together, and then making time for creativity and new ideas. So you have that autonomy, again, as an individual. And as a team, we're motivated to succeed when we create a sense of belonging that's uniquely ours. This is one of the things that I did very early in my career. I was hired way back in 97 as a project manager because I was good with people, good with teams. That's what they said. We had a bit of a track record. I was a salesperson for newspaper advertising space back in those days. And my boss said to me, he said, you've got free reign to define the way that the team works together. But know this, you've got to deliver a good service to the stakeholders and they're part of the team. We've got to make sure that we hit the dates that we've set. You'll get a little bit of contingency money. So, we kind of understand that not all of these things can stay fixed. But ultimately, it's your job to make sure that you stay on top of the detail, you make decisions in a timely manner, and the team feel motivated and inspired to do the work. And I was like, awesome, that's great. And I left the office like, this is so cool. And I'm like, all right, so I don't know how to do any of that. where the hell do I start? And of course, you start by getting to know each other. You start by getting to understand each other's personalities. You ask each other, how do you like to be communicated? You say things like, what makes you tick? What do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy? And what you're not doing is providing a guarantee that you're only going to give them work that they can enjoy. What you're doing is embracing that and say, look, where we can find opportunities to do that, we will. But ultimately, here's our goals. We're all in it together. So that's the second part of motivation, is that autonomy and understanding that you have it. And lastly, it's about connectedness. And so this is about you understanding your role in the bigger picture. Now, when you think about your own motivation, it could be about being a good, being a good dad, husband, mother, daughter, son, whatever it is. Okay, being a good human being in the world, putting your recycling out, doing your bit, right? Making sure that your interactions with others are positive, providing praise when it's required. You're always going to praise a behavior because you want more of behavior. When actually, what's interesting is when we provide positive feedback to people, it enhances the intrinsic motivation that we have, right? And so, typically we provide feedback on somebody's competence or the connectedness they have with the, you're really doing a great job and that's helping us to do this. But when we do that, that increases people's motivation. So if you're a manager and you're not providing feedback, there's many good reasons in order to do that. You want to maintain that connection, that sense of belonging, increase that psychological safety, make sure that people understand if they fail, it's about learning, it's not about blame. But really, you don't want to alienate yourself and you don't want others to feel alienated. So that sense of connectedness is crucially important for motivation. So understanding kind of the value that you add in terms of what the organization is trying to achieve. So can you draw a straight line from your job to the vision that the organization has? If not, then you probably need to do some more work culturally. You need a vision and a set of values at the organization level. And then every subculture needs its own vision, right? So that you can draw the line, and this is how this contributes to this, which, gives our life real meaning and purpose, which I'll come back to in a second. So that vision, you want to do work that aligns with your values, or you want to work with people that align with your values. Now, it's not always easy to do that. It's not like you're like, I'm only taking jobs with people who have the same values as me. Like, it takes years sometimes to find those people. Years and years and years. But you can certainly work with and for organizations who share your values. And that just means doing your homework and reminding people from time to time of what those values are when they stray from the value path. Values are there to be lived, not laminated. So it's important that they're visible on a day-to-day basis. And that connectedness also is about you and the relationships that you build. And what you want to make sure is that you're surrounding yourself with people who can help you be a better version of yourself. They have an empathetic ear, right? Not a sympathetic ear. They have an empathetic ear. So they'll listen, then they'll absorb, but then they'll offer some suggestions of action you can take. What they won't do is go, oh, I know. Colin's the worst. Oh my God. I don't know how you put up with it. I don't know how you put up with it. I wouldn't put up with it. You shouldn't put up with it. You should just go in there and tell. It's not helpful. Empathetic is, I understand. Yeah, that must feel terrible. Hey, how are you feeling right now? Listen, is there anything I can do? Hey, here's one or two things that you can maybe do maybe, talk to Colin. Maybe he's not aware of the way that he's coming across. And actually, I'm painting myself out to be really bad here. I'm not. I'm a really nice guy. Honestly, just ask me. So, it's about making sure that you're doing work to build relationships. And one of the things that many people found hardest during the pandemic and lockdown is it is very easy to retreat. It's very easy to just go into your tortoise shell and not come out. And so it's about making an effort to do the kind of video calls with family and friends back home. We did a number of kind of Friday drinks with our friends that we would normally go out and to restaurants and stuff. We would do a number of Friday drinks, got trashed on a couple of them as well. I don't know how to do it because it's just how we did it, just talking all the time. We do have to put time and effort into relationship building. It's crucially important for culture, but it's also important for you and your own motivation. You feel, kind of connected to people, which is massively important. I just want to end this little segment by talking about purpose, because there's so much pressure on everyone to come up with their purpose. And it feels like every week I'm reading something. Have you found your purpose yet? Have you? You're not adding value to the world unless you found your purpose. Oh man, like they're well-meaning blogs and that. But the inference is that like your purpose is under a stone and you're like, oh, here it is. Found it. That's it. There it is. It's like the meaning of life, right? What's the meaning of life? Well, I haven't found it yet, but any day now, I'm sure I'm going to find out. Like your purpose, you don't just get to your purpose like immediately. It can take years and years and years to find that calling. But what I would say is that every interaction, every kind of way that you show up and do your job, the attitude that you have, the mindset that you adopt, all of these things contribute to you finding out what this thing actually is. So I think it's a mistake for you to go looking for your purpose. Instead, what you want to do is concentrate on being a really good human being, concentrate on doing your job really well, concentrate on helping, elevating, coaching, supporting others, putting yourself in service, but at the same time, managing your own mental health, keeping yourself relevant in the way that you communicate, stay on top of world events, embrace new technical skills, be open-minded to change. And eventually what you'll find is something that leverages the strengths that your personality and your technical skills have. So you find something that actually interests you and you want to find out more about, links with where you actually want to go and what you want to achieve and what the world needs. Now, that could be in the company that you're in right now, doing a role that all of a sudden you didn't know that you wanted to do, right? I had a friend of mine was a CFO. He's like, I remember it's about 4 years ago. He's like, I just haven't found a thing. I'm like, mate, you seem way too charismatic to be a CFO, which is a total compliment, right? I'm not damn CFOs on the call. You're awesome. You do a great job. I just don't see many hugely social, gregarious CFOs because they're usually detailed people who are good with numbers. And anyway, long story short, an opportunity came up to be head of innovation. And he asked me, he's like, what do you think? Do you think I should give this a crack? I was like, I think you should. I was like, because firstly, you're not really interested in the role that you're doing right now. So I think you should take a little bit of a risk. Secondly, you seem to have spent the last 5 years trying to innovate within finance. So this could be the thing for you. And anyway, he did. He became this innovation manager. Absolutely loved it. Now lives in Europe doing exactly the same thing. Just loves it. But he didn't know that that was the thing. He just took a bit of a risk based on the things that he felt that he enjoyed. So don't go looking for it. Instead, take action, be a good human, elevate others, never stop looking for ways to learn and get better at being you. Gary Vaynerchuk, somebody I follow, someone who didn't have everything handed to him on a plate, son of an immigrant, had nothing, really had to work up. I love those kind of stories. In a way, it kind of mirrors my own. We were kind of lower working class and started from nothing. It doesn't make him any different, but what he's done is kind of grabbed motivation by the scruff of the neck and found ways to stay motivated. So I like this quote, if you're not doing, nothing's happening. Because I think the way to become motivated is to constantly take action. Now, by constantly, I don't mean 80 hours a week. I mean that time that you've kind of earmarked for productive work is that you take action in that time, and that you really go. Time is the most precious commodity that you have. So you should really guard it. You should really make sure that you protect it at all costs. However, the flip side of this is also true. So this is Thich Nhat Hanh. So as well as saying, don't just sit there, do something, we should also say, don't just do something, sit there. Because only when you give your mind, your body a break, can you kind of get to that 100% motivation. Without that, without refreshing yourself, without giving yourself a time away from the screens, without reading a book, without listening to music, going for a run, having a healthy, whatever you do to relax, without that, the tank is always going to be half empty. So it's crucially important that you recognize that you have to look after yourself. My friend Lisa O'Neill, who's a speaker in her own right, awesome speaker. She said, as an adult, you've got one job, and that's to put yourself to bed. And it's so true. Like the times when I've lacked motivation, I've looked at the previous day, right? And sometimes like I've done a 3 a.m. keynote in the US and then done a full day's work. And instead of then taking the next half a day off to refresh, I'm straight back in it. And then the next day I'm so lack motivation. Well, yeah, because I'm knackered. Didn't put myself to bed at a good time. I didn't think about what I'm putting in my body. I didn't take the time to actually go outside and get some vitamin D. So, presenteeism, another good thing about the pandemic is absenteeism became good. If you're unwell, don't come into the office or don't be on the Zoom call or whatever. If you're not well, take a break, get fit again. Please let that stick. And presenteeism became bad. You're always online. You're always sending emails. You're doing work at the weekend. There's really no need for that. You need to stop that immediately. Yes, all of that is true. You need to create kind of barriers. If you're still working at home, you need to close your laptop at a particular time, throw it in a cupboard, make sure you don't go back. Yeah, have there's this discipline again. Have that discipline to manage your kind of that motivation tank that you have. So some actions you can take. Number one, get up with intent. Get showered, get dressed. Listen, I'm not saying that you have to wear a suit and shirt and tie. This is my thing. I really enjoy dressing like that. I know you might find it weird, but I just do. You probably spent thousands of dollars on leisure. I tell you, there was one day where I thought that, I might be depressed during the pandemic because I walked outside in a pair of jogging pants. And I'm like, how is that possible? I'm like, maybe I need to talk to somebody. But get up with intent, have a shower, do your exercise, really get yourself ready to be productive, right? Remember that you're in control of your own motivation. Keep your daily task list small. You might have a master list, but just concentrate on the 3 things or 4 things that you have time for in the day. And then to get yourself going, do something really, really easy first. And I don't mean look on Twitter at the numbers of infected people, read the latest epidemiologist report. I didn't even know how to say it. Now I'm following people. I need to stop doing that. Really avoid people and activities that introduce negativity. One of the decisions I made really early on was not to read the news. And that has helped me maintain my own sense of perspective. Listen, I still read the important news bulletins, kind of public health alerts. But mainly the news is there just to suck you in and take you down a rabbit hole and undermine your motivation and productive time. Also, there are some people that I just can't be around right now because all they want to do is slag something or someone off, and I don't need that right now. And lastly, get some fresh air. Remember to get up, walk about, get the endorphins going, get some water in your body. Remember, coffee is only useful when you're feeling really flat. And even then, you're only going to get a 90-minute, 2-hour hit. Also, it has to be black. Otherwise, you're just drinking a cup of hot milk and you're probably going to want to go to bed. All right. To find out a little bit more about me, you can find it there, website. That's my email address. I have a Culture Fix community. That's to help people with not only their own motivation, but to give them the skills they need to be successful. Costs $100 a year. There are 4 programs that you immediately get, and then a bunch of other free stuff, as well as interacting with about 500 people from around the world. and a reminder to click the call to action button. All right, so the next session in November, there's a little button there to say register for the next session, where I'm going to be talking more broadly, not about you, but about as a team culture, as a subculture, is what are the things that you can do to balance kind of the care that you need to have for each other, the way that you work together, and how to grow and evolve to make sure that that vibrancy always exists. All right. Stop doing that. Let's have a look if we've got any questions. Yeah, Georgina, right? The news makes you lots happier. Yeah, honestly, they do nothing but scaremonger, clickbait headlines. That's not to decry the great work that some good journalists do. I subscribe to The Atlantic, and that's where I get my news from right now. Only the project news with comedy. Again, laughing, got some laughter. All right, anybody got any questions at all? Anything at all about motivation? Hopefully you've got some actions there that you can take. You know, hopefully there's one thing that you can do to change how motivated you feel. I think, you know, it's not that I'm always looking for problems. I'd like to think that I'm self-aware enough to look, if I haven't been as productive as I'd like to be, what's one thing that I can do differently tomorrow? Okay, any questions? Anything at all?